You know that person in the meeting. The one sitting 2 chairs from the conference room phone that nobody knows how to use anymore. Same black fleece they've worn since 2011. Same coffee mug with the logo from some company that got bought, stripped for parts, and renamed something inspirational like SignerCore. They're leaning back in that cracked leather office chair that has seen 3 CEOs, 2 culture transformations, and 1 guy named Brad who tried to make everyone say Happy Monday. And the meeting is doing what meetings do now. Performing. Somebody is saying visibility. Somebody else is saying alignment. A person with very clean sneakers is explaining that this quarter we need to tell a better story around our impact. There's a slide deck with a stock photo of people pointing at glass. And then there's the Gen X person. They have not spoken in 18 minutes. Not because they're lost. They understood the problem after the first sentence. They solved it in their head during the second. Now they're just waiting for the room to finish its ritual dance around the obvious. Finally, someone asks them what they think. They blink once. They say, "Yeah, we can do that. It'll take 2 weeks. Unless legal gets weird." Then they take a sip of coffee. That's it. No preamble. No brand statement. No little speech about passion or values. No, I'm so excited to be part of this conversation. Because they are not excited. They are employed. You know them. Maybe you are them. The person at work who wears the same 5 shirts. Who does their job competently and goes home. Who doesn't join the office feud over who didn't refill the LaCroix. Who doesn't repost company announcements with 5 fire emojis and a paragraph about gratitude. Who has somehow achieved the spiritual state of not caring who gets credit, as long as nobody schedules a follow-up meeting. And if you're younger, that person can look checked out. Disengaged. Cynical. Maybe even a little dead inside. Fair. We do have a certain raccoon behind a Denny's energy. But here's the thing. A lot of Gen X didn't stop trying to impress people because we gave up. We stopped because somewhere along the line we realized the performance was eating the whole day. And we already had stuff to do. This did not come from nowhere. Gen X came up in a weird little historical pothole. We were kids when adults discovered divorce, like it was a new fitness trend. We were kids when both parents started working because one paycheck stopped doing the job. We were kids when after-school care was a house key, on a shoelace, and a microwave burrito that could remove skin from the roof of your mouth. Latchkey Kids. That phrase sounds almost cute now. Like a vintage Etsy sign for trauma. But it meant you got home before anyone else. You let yourself in. You knew which floorboards creaked. You knew how to make a snack out of cereal, peanut butter, and whatever was not actively growing hair. You watched shows you were absolutely not supposed to watch. You answered the phone and said, "She's in the shower," because saying your mom wasn't home felt dangerous. We were raised by people who were tired, distracted, working, leaving, remarrying, disappearing, trying their best, or not trying much at all. And the message was not always spoken. It was just in the air. Figure it out. Don't be a burden. Don't make a big thing out of it. Are you bleeding? No? Then you're fine. That was the emotional triage system. You learned early that nobody was coming to check if your science project had enough glue. Nobody was sitting at the kitchen table gently processing your feelings about gym class. You did not have a parent tracking your homework through an app. You had a teacher writing "see me" in red pen, and you had the whole walk home to construct a lie or a plan. Sometimes both. So we got good at handling things. Too good, maybe. We became adults who don't expect praise, because praise was not exactly on subscription. We don't ask for validation because that feels like standing in the middle of the room holding an empty cup. We don't understand why every task now seems to require applause, a Slack reaction, and a "so proud of this team" post with a sunrise emoji. Not because we're better. God. No. Have you seen how we text? We'll respond to a heartfelt message with "yep," and then wonder why our friends think we're mad. But we were trained in a kind of emotional minimalism. We learned to keep our needs compact. Travel size. Under 3 ounces. So when people say Gen X looks checked out, sometimes what they're seeing is not apathy. It's self-reliance with bad lighting. It's a person who learned at 11 years old that the fastest way through a problem was not to gather a committee. It was to grab a screwdriver, put on a jacket, and see what happens. That wiring follows you. Into relationships. Into work. Into parenthood. Into the grocery store when the self-checkout starts screaming, unexpected item in bagging area, and you have a brief but intense fantasy about living in the woods. And then there's work. Oh, work. Gen X did not invent quiet quitting because some consultant needed a term to put on LinkedIn next to a photo of a laptop and a succulent. We had quiet quitting back when it was called going home. We called it boundaries, though honestly we didn't even call it that. We just left. At 5:07, if the work was done. Sometimes 5:03, if the boss was in a meeting. We watched what happened to the generation before us. The boomers were told if they gave their loyalty to a company, the company would give loyalty back. A watch, a pension, a retirement party in the break room with sheet cake and somebody from accounting crying near the coffee maker. Then we watched companies get very creative about breaking that deal. We watched people who had given 25, 30, 35 years get escorted out with a cardboard box and a security guard named Tony who looked embarrassed to be there. We watched pensions vanish into fine print. We watched family culture turn into shareholder value the second the numbers got soft. We learned something. The company does not love you. The company may like you. The company may appreciate your contributions in a mass email that spells your name wrong. But love? No. Love does not ask you to reapply for your own job. Love does not outsource your department to save 8 cents and then tell you to stay positive because change is an opportunity. Gen X saw the machinery. We saw behind the curtain. It was not a wizard. It was a guy in Dockers with a spreadsheet. So when younger workers came in wanting mission and purpose and values, a lot of Gen X just stood there with our gas station coffee thinking, that's adorable. Also dangerous. Not because purpose is bad. Purpose is great. If you find purpose at work, honestly, good for you. Frame it. Put it somewhere safe. Water it regularly. But Gen X tends to want something more basic from a job. Decent pay. Good insurance. A manager who does not use the word rock star. And do not bother me on weekends unless the building is literally on fire. Not, the client is upset fire. 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 The orange kind. This is not a lack of ambition. That's the part people miss. A lot of Gen X people are ambitious. We just don't always perform ambition in public. We don't need to stand on a chair and announce our growth mindset. We'll learn the new system. We'll fix the thing. We'll keep the operation from collapsing because nobody noticed the old database was held together by macros and the haunted spirit of Windows 98. But we're not necessarily going to cosplay devotion. We don't want to be part of a family at work because we already have a family, and some of them are weird enough without adding regional sales. We want clarity. We want competence. We want to not be dragged into a 4:30 Friday brainstorm where the answer is already no budget. Some people call that disengagement. Gen X calls it pattern recognition. Once you've seen enough layoffs, enough restructures, enough leaders with brave new visions who leave in 14 months with a payout and a podcast, you stop giving your soul to the quarterly theme. You do the job. You do it well. Then you go home and fix the garbage disposal because no one else is going to. And somewhere along the way, this bled into everything else. Clothes. Cars. Houses. Vacations. Social status. Fancy job titles that sound like they were assembled from refrigerator magnets. We stop trying to impress people. Not all at once. There's no ceremony. No one hands you a faded flannel and says, welcome. You are now free. It happens quietly. You're at a party, and someone is explaining their renovation in a voice that suggests the countertops have solved death, and you feel yourself nodding, politely, while thinking about how happy you were last night eating cereal over the sink in sweatpants. Or you're scrolling through photos of someone's luxury vacation, and instead of feeling envy, you feel tired on their behalf. So many outfits, so many angles, so much evidence gathering. Or you realize the car in your driveway is not impressive, but it starts every morning. The heat works, and there is one CD stuck in the player that has been there since Obama's first term. And somehow, that feels like enough. Enough is underrated. Gen X has become weirdly good at enough. Not always. We can still spiral. We can still buy things at Target we did not need because the end cap spoke to our inner raccoon. We are not monks. We are people who once thought chain wallets were a personality. But the older we get, the less interested we are in making our lives look good to strangers. There is a flip side to not caring. A good one. When you stop needing approval from every passing human, your decisions get cleaner. You stop asking, how will this look? You start asking, will this make my life more peaceful? And peace, once you've had enough chaos, becomes wildly sexy. Not candlelit bath sexy. More like, nobody needs me for 2 hours and the dishwasher is humming sexy. You begin optimizing for quiet, for time, for sleep, for friends who don't make you audition for affection, for a house where the furniture is comfortable instead of impressive, for shoes that do not injure you, for a calendar with white space in it, that rare and holy thing. I read somewhere that people who detach from constant social comparison tend to be less anxious, which is one of those findings that makes you say, yeah, no kidding, but apparently someone had to put it in a chart, because comparison is a machine that never stops eating. There is always someone richer, thinner, younger, more promoted, more renovated, more hydrated, somehow. There is always someone whose kitchen looks like nobody has ever opened mail in it. And if you spend your life trying to win that game, congratulations, your prize is exhaustion with better lighting. Gen X got tired of the game. Some of that is wisdom. Some of it is burnout wearing sunglasses. But either way, there is relief in realizing most people are not thinking about you nearly as much as you thought. They're thinking about themselves, their bills, their knees, their weird mole, their kid's math grade. The fact that they said you too when the server told them to enjoy their meal, which honestly happens to all of us and should be legally forgiven. So the performance starts to feel silly. You don't need the coolest clothes. You need the shirt that still fits and doesn't make your neck itch. You don't need everyone to admire your career. You need work that doesn't hollow you out before dinner. You don't need to be seen at every event. You need 2 or 3 people who notice when you go quiet. And that's where it gets complicated. Because the same armor that protected Gen X can also turn into a locked room. The whole, I don't need anyone, thing is useful when you are 12 and dinner is a frozen pizza and your parents won't be home until late. It's useful when you are 27 and your boss is making promises you know not to believe. It's useful when life goes sideways and you can function in a crisis with an almost alarming calm. But at some point, I don't need anyone can become, I don't know how to reach out. That's the cost. A lot of Gen X is lonely. Not alone, necessarily, lonely. There's a difference. You can be married and lonely, surrounded by coworkers and lonely, in a group chat full of memes, and still feel like no one has asked how you actually are since the first Bush administration. We are excellent at showing up for other people in practical ways. You need a ride from the mechanic? Done. You need help moving a couch? We'll complain the entire time, but we'll be there with ratchet straps. You need someone to sit with you in a hospital waiting room and not say dumb things. We are your people. But saying, I'm not okay, out loud. Gross. No thank you. Can I interest you in sarcasm instead? We learn to translate pain into jokes, fear into competence, need into I'm good. And after enough years, people believe us. They stop asking, because we trained them not to. That's the part we don't like to look at too closely. We can be proud of not performing. We can be proud of not needing constant applause. We can be proud of being the generation that can cook a meal from pantry scraps, drive a stick, ignore a trend, and smell corporate nonsense from 3 hallways away. But we also have to admit that sometimes our independence has a body count. Friendships we let fade because reaching out felt awkward. Family rifts we pretended didn't hurt because pride is easier to carry than grief. Moments when we could have asked for help, but instead chose to white-knuckle it in the garage, staring at a shelf full of half-empty paint cans like the answer was in there somewhere. Not trying to impress people is freedom. But not letting anyone in is a prison with better branding. There's a difference between being done performing and being done connecting. And maybe that's the line we're still learning how to walk, because the goal was never to become numb. It was to become honest. To stop pretending we care about status games that feel like junior high with health insurance. To stop clapping for systems that would replace us before our coffee got cold. To stop sanding down our real lives so they look smoother from the street. But maybe we can do that without disappearing. Maybe we can keep the part of Gen X that says, "No, I'm not answering that email on Sunday," and soften the part that says, "No, I don't need anybody ever." Maybe we can keep the plain black fleece and still call an old friend. Maybe we can keep our wry little distance from the circus and still admit when we're tired. Maybe we can stop performing without making our whole life one long exit, because that person in the meeting, the one with the old mug and the same 5 shirts, maybe they're not checked out. Maybe they've just survived enough nonsense to know what deserves their energy. They are not impressed by job titles because they've seen titles vanish. They are not dazzled by office politics because they've watched the loudest person get promoted and still need help opening a PDF. They are not chasing applause because applause is noisy and often attached to extra work. They are sitting there, listening, calculating, conserving. They know the difference between urgent and loud. They know the company is not a family. They know the weekend is not a resource to be harvested. They know that peace is not laziness. And when the meeting finally ends, they will close the laptop, stand up with that tiny middle-aged sound we all make now, and walk back to their desk. No fanfare. No performance. Just a person who figured out, probably later than they wish, that impressing people is a very expensive hobby. And they have other bills. So maybe Gen X didn't stop trying because we failed. Maybe we stopped because we saw the receipt. We saw what it costs to be endlessly available, endlessly agreeable, endlessly polished, endlessly hungry for approval from people who may not even know what they're applauding. And one day we just thought, nah, not in a dramatic way. No manifesto. No quitting the world to raise alpacas in Vermont, though let's not rule it out. Just a quiet nah. A smaller life, maybe, but a realer one. A life with fewer status symbols and more comfortable chairs. Fewer big announcements and more locked doors on Sunday morning. Fewer people impressed. Maybe more peace, and maybe, if we're careful, more honesty too. So when did you stop trying to impress people? And was it a relief, or did it cost you something?